and he's moving some of those storylines into the feature space. So there's going to be a lot people will recognize.
Anything that has to do with technology creating opportunity for us, I find very enjoyable.
There was a time when the name Star Wars brought entire generations together. Fans would sit wide-eyed, remembering the first time they saw a lightsaber ignite or heard the hum of a TIE fighter. But in recent years, a shadow has crept over the galaxy far, far away. Online arguments rage about whether Disney has lost sight of what made Star Wars magical in the first place. Social media is flooded with theories about corporate agendas, creative infighting, and the woke culture wars. Even dedicated fans have begun to wonder, has Star Wars drifted so far that it might never recover its former glory? This isn't just about nitpicking plot holes or complaining about new characters. There's something deeper at play, something that involves the very core of how stories are crafted and how studios treat the people who create them. Controversies have popped up like wildfire. Some revolve around divisive leadership, others around canceled projects or public firings that left fans torn between loyalty and frustration. The sequel trilogy itself triggered a mass debate. Some argued it betrayed George Lucas's original vision by leaning on spectacle and safe, nostalgic callbacks instead of genuine innovation. And then there's the elephant in the room, the abrupt dismissals of writers and directors, sometimes announced through cryptic social media posts or insider leaks. One day, a big name is hired with much fanfare. Then, just as quickly, we hear they've parted ways due to creative differences. If that wasn't enough, South Park, the animated series famous for its fearless satire, recently gave Star Wars and Disney a fierce comedic takedown that got everyone talking. For an empire as big and beloved as Lucasfilm, seeing it lampooned on such a massive stage was a jolt, like the showrunners poking a raw nerve that had been throbbing for years. Fans laughed at the brutal parody, but they also felt a tinge of sadness, realizing the joke was coming from a place of genuine disillusionment. The controversies don't stop there. Countless headlines discuss Kathleen Kenndey, handpicked by George Lucas to shepherd his legacy. Her decisions, from discarding Lucas's original outlines to overseeing a sequel trilogy that divided the fan base, continue to fuel heated debates. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, names like Stephen Knight pop up briefly, only to vanish from Star Wars projects without a trace. Each departure hints at creative clashes and management issues that threaten the franchise's future. Add to that the Gina Carano fiasco, which brought fierce debates about corporate power, cancel culture, and ideological bias to the doorstep of one of the world's most iconic storytelling universes. Some cheered her firing, others condemned it as a betrayal of free speech. The fallout led to legal battles, social media storms, and a fractured fan community that still isn't sure what's next. Where does all of this leave the Star Wars saga? Will it move beyond the nostalgic crutches that have kept it afloat? Or is the golden age of Jedi, Sith, and cosmic wonder a relic of the past, overshadowed by endless controversies? That's the real question. Is there a chance for a renewal that sparks the same joy people felt decades ago? Or have we entered a phase of permanent decline? A few years back, when Disney first took the reins of Star Wars,
And my advice to them was to not hear the noise as much, to continue doing the job that we've entrusted them to do.
Right.
Which is to tell the truth, to state the facts, to present the news in an accurate and a fair and in a timely basis.
fans were cautiously optimistic. The idea of new films, new stories, and new heroes sounded promising, especially after a long drought of cinematic releases. For a moment, it felt like stepping into a dream. The announcement of fresh trilogies, spin-offs, and tie-in shows was enough to make any Jedi wannabe swoon. But somewhere along the line, nostalgia became both the franchise's biggest strength and its Achilles heel. At first, it was exhilarating to see the old gang again. Han, Luke, and Leia taking the screen, reminding everyone of the original trilogy's magic. The marketing folks at Disney banked on that. They knew that simply teasing the beloved Star Wars logo, accompanied by the timeless soundtrack, would have hearts racing. And it worked, at least at the beginning. The Force Awakens kicked things off with crowd-pleasing moments that felt like a direct echo of Episode 4. Critics and fans were split. Some hailed it as a glorious return to form, while others accused it of rehashing old story beats without adding enough originality. Yet box office numbers soared. suggesting that this safe approach had paid off. Over time, though, cracks began to show. Instead of forging bold new directions, the reliance on familiar icons turned stale. Luke Skywalker's cameo appearances, especially in The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett, became emblematic of this issue. Sure, seeing a de-aged Luke slicing through droids ignited a spark of awe, but many fans started asking, how many times can we rely on these legacy characters before it all feels hollow? At its best, nostalgia can be a gateway to fresh storytelling. At its worst, it becomes a crutch that signals a lack of imagination. By repeatedly showcasing the same faces and referencing the same stories, Disney has run the risk of alienating those who long for something new. While it might offer short-term excitement, it also stifles creative innovation. Original characters like Rey and Finn had the potential to carry the torch forward, yet their journeys often felt overshadowed by cameo after cameo or forced references to older lore. This leads many to wonder, is Star Wars stuck in a cycle of looking backward, too afraid to move on? The brand built its name by introducing groundbreaking visuals, complex moral questions, and imaginative worlds. Now, the series appears cautious, repeating a proven formula in hopes of recapturing that old spark. Fans keep asking for genuine surprises, new planets, new conflicts, fresh mythologies. Yet the powers that be seem hesitant to step away from the safety net of the original trilogy. Just when fans thought the conversation around Star Wars couldn't get more heated, South Park decided to add its unmistakable voice. Known for sparing no one in its satire, the show delivered an episode that zeroed in on Disney's approach to not only Star Wars but also its broader corporate strategies. In classic South Park fashion, it was both hilarious and ruthless. One moment in the episode that immediately went viral was the parody of Kathleen Kenndey, caricatured as someone who only knows how to put a chick in it, make her lame and gay. The line, intentionally exaggerated for comedic effect, touched on a real frustration among some fans who see Disney's push for diversity as shallow or tokenistic. Whether people agree with that assessment or not, the dialogue cut straight to the core of a debate that has simmered online for years.
Business with large Western companies and brands, but we bring to China a type of ideology, admittedly a relatively benign one as it relates to politics in China, but still a Western ideology. And in many ways, that had value to them.
Is Disney focusing on genuine representation or just ticking boxes? Beyond that pointed critique, South Park also highlighted the franchise's reliance on retreads of old story arcs, calling out the cyclical pattern of nostalgia-laden marketing. This comedic lens might have been outrageous, but it held a mirror up to the fandom. Many have complained that the series keeps trying to replicate the emotional beats of the original films without daring to innovate. South Park amplified that complaint, exposing the tension between die-hard fans who want change and those who resist anything too far from the classic formula. South Park's genius lies in its ability to provoke laughter and discomfort in equal measure. While some viewers brushed it off as simple comedic exaggeration, others recognized a stinging truth. The show's creators, Trey Parker and Matt Stone, have built their careers on pinpointing cultural flashpoints and mocking them with razor-sharp wit. In this case, they tapped into the widespread unease about whether Star Wars has grown stale and overly commercial. To be fair, Star Wars has always been a juggernaut of merchandising and branding. But the South Park episode suggested that the scales have tipped even further. The story itself might be playing second fiddle to broader corporate agendas. Fans who once found solace in a galaxy far, far away are now confronted with a brand that, to some, feels more like a product line than a living, breathing universe. And South Park, in typical fashion, made sure nobody could ignore this uncomfortable possibility. At the center of much of this debate is Kathleen Kenndey, the president of Lucasfilm. When George Lucas chose her to helm Star Wars back in 2012, he publicly expressed confidence, calling her the ideal successor. Initially, many fans trusted his judgment. Kennedy's resume was impressive, including producing credits on blockbusters like E.T. and Jurassic Park. She seemed poised to blend Lucas's imaginative vision with her vast Hollywood experience. Early announcements were met with optimism, especially when Kenndey said she would respect the essence of Star Wars while expanding it for new generations. Yet, almost immediately, she faced a turning point that would define her leadership. George Lucas had provided outlines for the sequel trilogy, offering a roadmap rooted in the lore he had cultivated for decades. Kenndey, along with other Disney executives, made the call to disregard much of Lucas's input. This bold pivot might have paved the way for fresh storytelling, but it also opened the door to a sequel trilogy that many fans found disjointed. The Force Awakens, directed by J.J. Abrams, was a massive commercial triumph. Critics generally liked it, praising its nostalgic callbacks and updated style. But as the trilogy continued, glaring inconsistencies emerged. Rian Johnson's The Last Jedi took risks that split the fandom down the middle. Some called it visionary, others declared it a betrayal of the Star Wars legacy. By the time Abrams returned for The Rise of Skywalker, the sense of a coherent vision had all but evaporated. Plot threads felt rushed or unresolved, and the finale left large segments of the fan base unsatisfied. Kenndey received the brunt of the backlash. The arguments typically fell into a few categories. Lack of a unified plan, critics claimed there was no overarching narrative guiding the trilogy. Overemphasis on identity politics. Some believed characters were introduced or sidelined based on external pressures rather than organic storytelling. Ignoring Lucas's foundations. Many felt that dismissing the original outlines was the root cause of the sequel trilogy's lack of cohesion.
Anything that has to do with technology creating opportunity for us, I find very enjoyable. The creative process at its highest level is at times frustrating, but often, and fortunately for us, really enjoyable.
Meanwhile, spin-offs and standalone movies experienced turmoil as well. Projects like Rogue One and Solo went through extensive reshoots and director changes. Although Rogue One ended up a fan favorite for many, Solo underperformed at the box office. Rumors flew about chaotic sets and shifting creative visions, fueling the narrative that Lucasfilm had become a revolving door of ideas that never fully matured. Amidst this storm, Kenndey retained her position, even renewing her contract multiple times. Insiders suggested that, despite fan outcry, Disney viewed her as a reliable figure who delivered profitable films and expanded Star Wars content onto Disney+. Still, each new project announcement now comes with a sense of trepidation. Will this be the one that finally unites the fan base? Or will it spark a fresh round of controversy? Away from the spotlight of the sequel trilogy, a quieter but equally significant drama has been unfolding. The revolving door of directors, writers, and showrunners who sign on to Star Wars projects only to exit in a swirl of creative differences. Big names like Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, initially set to direct Solo, left mid-production. Colin Trevorrow was famously attached to Episode 9 before parting ways, leading to J.J. Abrams returning at the 11th hour. And most recently, Stephen Knight, known for his gritty work on Peaky Blinders, was tapped to develop a story centered on Rey, only for him to step away soon after. The pattern is unsettling. Many of these creators were brought in with great fanfare, highlighting their innovative track records and passion for Star Wars. Yet soon after, rumors spread of script overhauls, creative limitations, and studio meddling. Insiders whisper that Lucasfilm has a particular vision it refuses to deviate from. This has led to speculation that the studio wants yes men or yes women who will follow established guidelines without pushing boundaries. Stephen Knight's case is illuminating. He reportedly tried to infuse the franchise with a darker, more character-driven approach, stepping away from the safe formula fans have come to expect. Early drafts included brand new story arcs meant to expand the universe in unexpected directions. But each time he turned in a draft, he was met with notes demanding more tie-ins to established lore or safer story choices that aligned with the brand. Eventually, Knight left, unwilling to sacrifice his creative freedom. This revolving door phenomenon doesn't just affect the people who walk away. It also sends a message to the wider industry. For aspiring filmmakers, Star Wars might now appear less like a golden opportunity and more like a minefield of corporate constraints. The result? A potential lack of bold voices stepping forward, worried that their creative visions will end up watered down or shelved entirely. To be fair, big franchises often impose guidelines. Marvel, for instance, requires directors to maintain continuity within the ever-expanding Marvel Cinematic Universe.
The rice has to be body temperature, and if it takes too long to serve it, it's no longer body temperature. But what was interesting to me about him was he had 3 Michelin stars, and he was still trying to learn how to get better, how to be better.
Yes.
And I showed that to executives at Disney.
But the difference here is that many Marvel projects still give directors room to inject unique flair while adhering to broader plot arcs. In Star Wars' case, repeated creative disputes suggest an environment where visionaries often clash with an entrenched system that prizes brand consistency over innovation. Fans can't help but wonder what exciting stories might have been told if these directors had been allowed to spread their wings. While disagreements over scripts and storylines inflame the creative side of the Star Wars universe, the Gina Carano controversy brought corporate culture and ideological politics to the forefront. Carano, a former MMA fighter turned actress, captured fans' hearts as Cara Dune in The Mandalorian. Her character was tough, independent, and refreshingly authentic in a galaxy often ruled by space wizards and bounty hunters. But in early 2021, Carano's social media posts, critical of mask mandates and other political hot-button issues, sparked outrage. Some labeled her views as inflammatory and even dangerous. Others defended her right to free speech. Lucasfilm announced her dismissal from future Star Wars projects, citing social media posts that the company deemed abhorrent. The fan community erupted. In one corner, supporters praised Disney for taking a stand against rhetoric they found offensive. In another corner, critics accused the studio of practicing ideological censorship. Carano didn't back down. She filed a lawsuit claiming ideological discrimination and wrongful termination. In 2023, she scored a legal victory that forced many to question how far studios can or should go in monitoring the personal viewpoints of their employees. Some saw this as a triumph of individual rights. Others worried it set a precedent for actors to challenge studios over any perceived ideological mismatch. The Carano saga speaks to a broader question. Should entertainment giants wield the power to silence talent they disagree with? Or does that cross a line into censorship? For Star Wars fans, the situation was another fracture in an already divided community. Those who longed for the simpler days of rooting for heroes and booing villains found themselves thrust into a charged debate about corporate ethics and political alignment. This entire ordeal also highlighted the heightened scrutiny that celebrities face. Social media gives them a direct line to fans, but one controversial post can provoke a massive backlash. The stakes are even higher when you're part of a franchise as influential as Star Wars. Carano's departure was more than just another headline. It became a symbol of how cultural and political battles have invaded even the escapist realms of sci-fi and fantasy. So, where does all of this leave the Star Wars universe as it stands? On one hand, there's an avalanche of new content.
The one where he was in the boxing ring.
Boxing ring, and Howard Cosell, who was then a famous announcer for ABC Sports, introduced him. And I was asked at some point to get Mr. Sinatra Listerine. We're at Madison Square Garden. It's not like there's a Listerine store in Madison Square Garden. So I dutifully ran out, found a drugstore of some sort. This is before CVS. This is 45 years ago.
Disney Plus series like The Mandalorian, Andor, and Ahsoka, each trying to find the right balance between fan service and fresh storytelling. These shows have seen varying levels of success, with The Mandalorian quickly becoming a cultural phenomenon thanks to the adorable Grogu, often referred to as Baby Yoda, and the gritty charm of its lead, Din Djarin. On the other hand, the theatrical landscape for Star Wars feels murky. After the mixed reception to the sequel trilogy and the box office underperformance of Solo, Disney seems cautious. Announcements about new films come and go, but many never reach the camera-ready stage. Viewers keep hearing about different directors, new timelines, or unique story angles, only to watch those projects stall or vanish completely. Fan sentiment is equally fractured. Some have found renewed hope in shows like Andor, praising its political depth and darker tone. Others remain disillusioned, insisting the franchise will never reclaim the magic it had under George Lucas. They see each new release as more proof of a corporate entity flailing to find a profitable identity, rather than a creative force pushing the boundaries of cinema. It's not all doom and gloom, though. There are still millions of people who love Star Wars for what it is, an expansive universe full of possibility. From video games like Jedi, Fallen Order, to expanded literary universes, fans continue to celebrate the lore. Cosplayers, convention-goers, and collectors show no signs of abandoning the saga that has shaped pop culture for over 4 decades. If anything, the controversies seem to be fueling further conversation, turning Star Wars into a reflection of our broader cultural and political debates. At its heart, Star Wars is still about hope, that universal concept that launched a ragtag group of rebels against an overwhelming empire. The question is whether the current leadership and creative teams can channel that hope into stories that feel genuine and resonate across generations. If they can, there's every reason to believe this franchise will soar again. If not, Star Wars risks becoming a cautionary tale of how even the mightiest can fall when they lose their sense of purpose.
That would be my preference as well.
Why your preference?
Well, look, I'm going to be 72 years old tomorrow. I've put in almost 50 years. There are other things in life that I'd like to do. I also am confident that the board will be able to identify an able successor.
After charting a course through creative disputes, satirical takedowns, public firings, and fan revolts, it's clear that the Star Wars galaxy stands at a crossroads. Nostalgia gave the franchise a lucrative second wind, but it also shackled it to the past. Bold new directions have often been met with corporate roadblocks or fandom division. Leadership figures like Kathleen Kenndey remain polarizing, credited with big successes but also blamed for Star Wars' most glaring missteps. Meanwhile, individual cases like Stephen Knight stepping away or Gina Carano battling in court illustrate a broader struggle over who truly controls the narrative and values of this iconic brand. Is there a path forward that recaptures the sense of wonder we felt when we first heard about Jedi Knights and the Force? Could the next wave of writers and directors finally break free from the cycle of safe choices and craft stories that genuinely expand the Star Wars universe? Or have we reached a point where commercial imperatives and corporate guidelines weigh too heavily, leaving little room for the pioneering spirit that once defined the saga? Star Wars has always been about an underdog rising against impossible odds, fueled by an unwavering belief that good can triumph over evil. Maybe the franchise will mirror its own storyline, finding redemption in unexpected places and surprising even the most jaded fans. Alternatively, the cracks exposed by South Park, the controversies around Disney, and the seemingly endless staff shakeups might signal a slow but certain drift away from what Star Wars used to be. In the end, we, the fans, play a role in shaping Star Wars' destiny. Every ticket bought, every streaming subscription renewed, every collectible purchased sends a signal. If enough people demand something fresh and inspiring, something that honors the core themes without rehashing the same old scripts, then maybe the powers at Lucasfilm will listen. Or maybe the biggest twist is yet to come, and we'll look back on these controversies as the growing pains of a galaxy preparing for its next great adventure. So, what do you think? Are we on the brink of a Star Wars renaissance? Or have we seen too many missteps for the series to fully recover? The Force, as they say, binds us together, fans, creators, critics alike. And in that collective energy lies a spark of hope that the Star Wars saga, for all its flaws and foibles, might still have the capacity to dazzle us once again.